This presentation will be about how to adapt our interpersonal communication with the Japanese culture. Even though the Japanese are considered religious, they call themselves not religious, and that's because they don't affiliate themselves with just one religion. Their idea of religion is instead, it takes ideas and values from the Shinto, from Buddhism, from Confucianism, and from Christianity. And also in whatever stage of their life they're in, they might take values from these religions. For example, they might be purified at a Shinto shrine right after birth. They might get married in a Christian church and then be buried in a Buddhist ceremony. Depending on what time of the year and what they need, they might go to different shrines and temples of the different religions as well. It's kind of an as-needed thing. They've actually constructed surveys year after year, kind of like our census, where it asks what religion you are, and depending on what's going on in their lives is what they'll mark on that. And that's why one year the Shinto might get 40% of the population, where the next year it might get 50%. So it's to understand how the different religions intertwine into each other. We'll talk about the different branches of them. The first one I'll talk about is the Shinto, and this is also called the Way of the Spiritual Deities, or the Kami, which are the deities. Since this religion was around before there was written text, it bases a lot of its principles and a lot of the deities on nature. So you'll see like the deities in forms of rocks or trees or mountains or even humans. But it's just linked to that. Because this religion was around before written text, it was passed down through rituals and stories, and the rituals were used to maintain or reinstate the harmony between natures and humans and the kami. Because this religion is so centered around nature, it was linked to agriculture, especially when that first became a part of the Japanese culture. And in today, it's still linked to the nature and agricultural aspects and the local communities because of the harmony values that it preaches. The next religion that came into Japan was Buddhism. And one principle that everybody knows from that is karma, and that's basically what goes around comes around. And how you acted in this life, well, you get reborn and you will have consequences in your next life. One thing that people might not know is how in Buddhism all things are linked in a system of interdependency. That means that people don't live for themselves, basically. And in order to get over this self-centeredness, you'd have to transform or convert into how they think and act through the practice of the Buddhists, which is morality, meditation, and wisdom. Now, the branch of Buddhism that the Japanese adapted was called Mahayana, and it's basically the same principles of the morality, meditation, and wisdom, but it was designed to reach as many people as it possibly could. Now, even though this branch of Buddhism came into practice in the 1st century of BCE, it didn't actually get to Japan until 6th century CE. Confucianism was also used a lot by the Japanese. It was confounded by Confucius, and he basically he had to lead his world back to peace and stability, and he did this by emphasizing the values of respect for elders, proper conduct, duty, loyalty, and learning. And basically what he said was that a stable family is the basis for a stable government. And now the Japanese saw the combined values of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Shinto as a way to maintain peace in their country. The last religion that we find in the Japanese culture is Christianity. It's a fairly new religion over there. It wasn't even popular until late 1800s, and it still didn't take off very fast. In today's world, they pretty much just use it for holidays, or use it ceremoniously, and they still use the values from the other 3 religions in their daily lives. It's just the Christians that came over originally to spread the religion wanted them to be exclusively Christian, and they didn't want it. They take values from all the religions that they have learned about in the past. As far as the Japanese values, they do have a lot of values, and you'll probably notice how some of them popped up in the religions that we just talked about. One of the main values is harmony, and maintaining this harmony is what allows the people to function as one without a lot of confrontation. The Japanese people actually do not like confrontation. They believe that your individual opinion has to be subdued for the good of the group, basically. And they see it as immature if you can't do that. They also apologize frequently to maintain that harmony. Another value you'll see a lot is empathy. And basically what that means is your feelings are more important than the reasoning behind it. Say if you encounter a conflict at work, they don't see you listing the pros and cons of the problem to get you to an agreement any faster. That's why they try to figure out the feelings behind it in order to get rid of the conflict. An example of this that we do not see over here is that if you made a mistake as a worker, your boss would not come over to you and yell at you. He would instead try to put himself in your shoes, feel the shame and the depression that you feel about making the mistake, and then try to show that he understands how you feel. The next value we have is hierarchy, and this has roots in both the Shinto and Confucianism religions. This basically is you get treated differently depending on your age and your status. Actually, in business meetings, everybody carries business cards. That way, when they talk to you, they know how to talk to you, because depending on whether you're of a higher status or not, you will be talked to differently. Modesty is very important in their culture as well, and that's basically you downplay your abilities. It's seen as childish if you speak highly of yourself. And finally, we have saving face, and that's basically they're always worried about how others are going to see them. Actually, if you lose your face, it's called, which means you embarrass yourself or you make a scene, it's one of the biggest social disgraces you can ever encounter over there. So because they're so afraid of losing face, they rarely act spontaneously. As far as language goes, the Japanese speak Japanese. They have two sets of phonetic alphabets, the katakana and the hiragana. The hiragana is the more angular alphabet, and the katakana is more rounded and curly, and it's also used for foreign words. Traditionally, their writing is written in up and down columns and read from right to left, but as their country is becoming more modernized, it's done more in the rows and reading from left to right like we do in America. As far as their spoken language, it's very regular. They don't really have a lot of idioms, so basically what they say is what they say. There's no hidden meaning behind it. Although because they're trying to keep the harmony, they don't use direct yes and no answers because they believe it brings an end to a conversation. So if you're talking to a Japanese person, when they say yes, it does not mean I agree, it means I understand. And instead of saying a flat out no, they might say that's difficult or it's difficult. They also have something you might have seen on the internet called English, and it's their variety of English. There's no L's, there's no R's, they have different pronunciations, and they create new meanings for borrowed words. So they might have a word over there that you won't see as English, but they know it as a different meaning, which is probably why things get lost in translation. Now that we understand a little bit about their culture, we can start getting into their interpersonal protocol behaviors. First, we'll talk about their greeting behaviors. Now, traditionally, when two Japanese people meet, they will bow to each other. And say, if you're meeting somebody of a higher status, you will bow a deeper bow than you would somebody who's more on your level. Although a foreigner doesn't necessarily have to bow, a handshake does them just fine. When you do enter somewhere inside, you do want to take your shoes off. Normally they will have slippers. It just keeps the inside clean and keeps the dirty outside. You do want to make small talk because the point of a conversation to them is to build a relationship, not discuss ideas. So small talk will get you far in their religion, and if you be polite, it will earn you more respect. They really do not like loud or abrasive behaviors. As far as your personal appearance over there, the general tone is formal. And if you're not really sure how you should be dressed, you would rather overdress than underdress. Even in hot weather, you still need to dress nice. Now, women need to kind of be careful or be more aware of how they're dressing. Basically, you want to kind of downplay your makeup, your jewelry, and your accessories. You don't want to show too much skin, so avoid low neckline, short skirts. Avoid high heels because it's kind of intimidating. It makes you tower over there. They're kind of small already. And conservative hairstyles, conservative dressing. Neutral colors are the way to go. You could probably infer this from how they expect you to dress, but punctuality is very important to them. You either need to be on time or early to meetings. They see time as something concrete. It can be saved, spent, lost, or wasted. So these are just some tips on how to interact with them if you're ever in a business setting with them. First and foremost, you need to be patient because silence is a key component in communication for them. It could mean a couple of things. It could mean that they're thinking. They choose not to use verbal signals. They don't say, let me think. They're just silent. They could also be using silence to save face and avoid embarrassing either parties. So either they're disapproving of your idea, but they're just staying silent, or they're trying to figure out the right words to say to save face. Another key component is you have to be able to listen. We as Americans like to say our point first and then back it up with facts. They like to say the facts first and build up to their point. The hard part is that between sentences they do take pauses. That doesn't mean they're done talking, it just means they're taking pauses, and if you interrupt them, it means you're being impolite or impatient. You also don't want to get too close to them. Try to keep your distance because they see body contact as a privilege between intimate friends. I mentioned earlier something about business cards because they do have an order of hierarchy. Make sure that you have one so they understand where you are as comparison to them, because like I said, they will talk to you different. They'll use a different language around you. You also might socialize with them outside of work. They have this group mentality. If you socialize with them outside of work, it kind of brings you more into their groups. So they'll be more willing to make deals with you and talk to you and stuff. Now there's some physical body language that you need to keep in mind as well. It's considered rude if you point your feet at someone, so try not to do that. They don't really like you to talk too loud or use wild gestures because it's seen as disgraceful or barbaric. If you have good posture when you're talking to them, you can get a lot of respect from that. And then try to minimize your eye contact because it can either be seen as you trying to challenge them, or it can be seen as you being impolite if they are of a higher status than you. These are just some other messages that might not necessarily happen in a business meeting, but just so you know a little bit more about how they act. Basically, they do a lot of, they're very expressive because they believe that your tone of voice, your facial expressions, everything will reveal more than just your words, and it'll be more accurate as well. They do a lot of laughing. They laugh when they're embarrassed. They're taught to cover their mouth when they laugh. It's seen as unbecoming in a woman if she doesn't. They also smile a lot. They smile when they're reluctant to say no, or they're uncomfortable, or they're upset. Some people get insulted because they have a blank face. All the blank faces is they don't understand you, or they don't know how to answer a question you're asking. They could tilt their head, which is you might see a lot in a business meeting, and you might also see it accompanied with them inhaling air through their teeth. And this just means they're thinking, they disagree with what you're saying, or they're just reluctant to answer you. You might also see them scratch the back of their neck. This just means they're embarrassed as well. If they wave their hand in front of their body, it just means they're saying no to you, or I don't speak English. It'll probably be them saying I don't speak English. Sometimes you'll see them pointing to their nose. They don't point to their heart. So when they're asking who, me, instead of to their heart, they'll point to their nose. If they have straight posture, they're known to be, a little bit more on the serious side, or they've just had a good upbringing. And then something you might also see in a business meeting is them, quote unquote, sleeping in front of you. And what this is they just, when you're talking to them, they find it easier to close their eyes because it minimizes any distractions and they can try to understand you a little bit more. especially if you're speaking English to them, they need a little bit more time to absorb what you're saying. It's also used when they're thinking deeply about something, or in a business, if the boss has his eyes shut in the room with you, it means he's trusting what you all are saying, and he has confidence in you.